Hey guys, David Robinson here. Welcome to the apartment investing journey. I've got a special episode for you today. Really excited to have my friend Whitney Sewell with me on the show today. Whitney, how you doing?
I am great. Glad to be here, David.
Well, Whitney is the CEO and founder of LifeBridge Capital, a multifamily syndication investment firm with 900 doors and 300 million in assets under management. He's also the host of the well-known show, The Real Estate Syndication Show, which has featured over 1,000 experts in the field, and the founder of the LifeBridge Foundation. This is something he's been working on for quite some time now, and is part of his commitment to donate 50% of his profits to support orphans and their adoptive families. And we'll learn a little bit more about Whitney and why that's so important to him. And the great thing about Whitney is that he really started from nothing in 2017 and has built a phenomenal business. Like I mentioned before, 900 doors, 300 million in assets under management, and has gotten to a place where he consistently raises over $10 million in just a few hours for his deals. And so he's a friend of mine, he's a mentor and a coach of mine, and I'm excited to have him on the show. And so, Whitney, that's a very brief bio. Our podcast is all about the journey. And so, if you don't mind, let's back up. Let's talk about your story a little bit. I know that you're well known in our circles, but tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in the real estate space.
Yeah, no, honored to be here, David. And yes, I go back to March of 2001, and I say March because that is the month that I decided to join the military. And of course, I had no idea that 6 months later, our nation would be at war, and none of us seen that coming, of course. But I found myself within a short period of time, spending a year of my life in Iraq, toting around a machine gun, praying every day I get to go home. I just never imagined, obviously, that actually happening. I'm thankful for that experience, but I'm thankful the Lord brought me home safely. Unfortunately, not everyone in my squad even made it home. That's difficult things like that shape a young man, right? In many ways, and that did me. And one thing that the military taught me that I think is important for everyone listening ultimately is to have a never give up mentality, right? If you're going to be successful in business or an entrepreneur in any kind of business, it's not about when you're going to get knocked down, right? You're going to get knocked down, but it's a matter of getting back up and continuing to get back up. And when you're in combat, it's just not an option, right? It's not an option to give up. Other people are depending on you, and on your specialty or your job, whatever that is. They are expecting you to perform, no matter the circumstance, right? No matter the situation. And so your mindset is very different, going into things, knowing that, right? And you're going to be in difficult times. And I think as entrepreneurs, we know we're going to be in difficult times. So when you get knocked down, like, just go ahead and expect it, right? You have to expect it. It's going to happen. But the people that are successful, hey, guess what? They've been knocked down many times, right? And get back up. They get knocked down again, they get back up, and that's ultimately what I think makes a successful entrepreneur. It's not always the smartest guy in the room. And more times than not, it's not the guy who would most consider, if you looked at their bios or their background, who you would say is the smartest guy in the room, because I am not. I've built a business on not being the smartest guy in the room, right? But surrounding myself with the smartest people and that have taught me and helped me, and that has been a big part of our growth. But moving forward, I got out of the military, came home, tried to figure out what I was going to do, and had no idea. I felt crippled by not having that piece of paper, that says diploma at the top, right? That everyone, we're all taught, or oftentimes, to think that that's so important, to have a great job and secure position and benefits, and I just felt helpless, right? Because I felt like, well, I don't have that, and what can I do? And so law enforcement, so it was something I'd always thought about, and it was an easy transition for me. I loved the uniform, the discipline, the service, right? I loved being a first responder. I loved being the first one there. A car has just had an accident. There's kids in there. I loved being there, to help them and pull them out, or so many situations, right? And like that were very enjoyable for me. And I loved working the road. I got hired by Kentucky State Police. There were 5 positions, 1,200 applicants. I was blessed to have one of those. I loved doing that. However, after a year or so, I got married. And, my wife and I, Chelsea, we just passed each other in the hallway the first whole year of marriage. And I finally started to realize, hey, guys are retiring, with 25, 30 years on, still making 40 grand. Or 45, after that long of a career and working the worst schedule you can imagine, right? Putting up with things that, hey, almost nobody should have to put up with at times. And so finally, I would have done it for free the first couple of years. I loved doing it. However, it finally hit me, hey, this is just not what is best. And so for my family, my wife and I, it's very important for us. We wanted her to be able to stay at home. We had children, and Lord willing, and that, and that salary is going to be very difficult. And so I thought, okay, how can I supplement my income? I still felt helpless. I still thought, this is all I'm qualified to do. And I didn't know entrepreneurs. I wasn't raised around entrepreneurs or investors or anything like that. I didn't think about money in that way. And just felt helpless almost. But I thought this is what all I'm qualified for. And so I started doing some research and read Rich Dad Poor Dad amongst many other books and started learning that, hey, not only had 1 or 2 people built wealth in real estate, but like millions of people, like have built wealth in real estate and own real estate. And that's one of the biggest wealth generators, out there. So I thought, okay, if all those people can do it, I can do something, right? I may not ever be this big commercial real estate person. However, hey, I can have a few rentals that would supplement our income as a police officer. So in 2009, I bought 2 triplexes and ultimately made a ton of mistakes and paid too much, trust the seller too much, trust the realtor too much, just didn't do proper due diligence looking back. Obviously we learned a lot more now. I can just see so many holes in that process, that happened. And man, it was such a trying time for my new bride and I. And we were remodeling a house. We moved into our first house at that time, and we were remodeling it while living in it, which I wouldn't recommend to most. Mm-hmm. My poor bride had to wash dishes in the bathtub a lot longer than I would like to admit, just because we had gutted the kitchen anyway, that it was a trying time for us. We learned a lot about each other, grew a lot, and while also managing these 2 triplexes, right? So I was doing that during the day while being a police officer at night. There's just a lot of stress, around that. Finally, I met a guy that was a federal agent, and I thought, well, I didn't even know this was a thing that like I could possibly do. So long story short, I became a federal agent. That moved us to Virginia, where we live now. And I sold those apartments, and I, that real estate thing was still always there. Like I always thought, I know I can build wealth in real estate. However, I was a professional horse trainer as well. And I'd been doing that since I was a boy, or riding, and it came very easy. It was just a passion of mine. And so I started promoting that business and doing very well at that, and selling horses for more money than I ever imagined. And I say that because oftentimes people have a passion that may not be what they need to be focusing on right now. It may not be the highest and best use, but it may be, you may be able to make a business around that. And I started to do that and started making good money doing that. However, my wife and I were on the beach one fall, and we were just thinking about all the time I'm spending in, my federal agent position. And then, I would run home, I would load the horses up, go to the arena, give lessons, train horses till midnight most nights. And it was just this battle, right? Every day, that's what I was doing. And I was missing time with my wife, time with Chelsea and our boys. At that moment we were walking in what I call like thinking time. We were just praying and thinking through, is this going to get us where we want to be? Like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, am I going to keep this up, like this pace of all these hours? And is it going to accomplish what we're trying to do? And it was obvious then to us that, hey, it's not what is best. Right? It is not going to get us there. It was never going to be passive. It was going to be very difficult to build wealth. I was always going to have to be the one training those people's horses. And so finally it was like obvious to us, we had to make some hard decisions. And this was like September. And by December, And actually, between Christmas and New Year's, we were moving out of our farm, our house. We sold everything. We sold the farm. We sold the house, and we were also starting our third adoption process, and which I'll share a little bit about that story probably in a minute. But there were a lot of expenses that were fixing to happen. At the same time, I started going to conferences related to commercial real estate, and up to this point, I had owned a 15-unit apartment building, and that I really thought that, that kind of blew my mind a little bit, right? Even at 15 units, thinking that was possible for me. And so, when I thought of like large apartment buildings or large commercial real estate, that just didn't even seem possible. Like that was such a disconnect there from mentally me thinking that was even a reality for me. I thought, okay, maybe 20, 30 years from now, or I don't know who those guys are that can do that. Right. Now, I didn't even question that was an option for me. However, I started going to these conferences, and right away I'm meeting all these people, guys and gals, who had only been in the business a short period of time, but they were buying apartment buildings. And I thought, wait a minute, like if they can do this, if all these people in this room can do this, guess what? I can do it too. I'll figure this out. So I did. I got on this hunt of like, who's doing this? And I was on a hunt too for that mentor, somebody that could help me. And there were many things around, stipulations for me of who this mentor had to be and things that I wanted that person to emulate, and, who their character and all kinds of things. So it was a big due diligence process of finding that person. However, that was a game changer, right? Having somebody in my corner that cared about my success. And then it was a matter of, hey, me just digging in. We sold the farm, and so it was like burning that bridge. And so that began a massive process for us. And we moved into a small house in town, not in the best area of town. It was a very difficult time. The next 2 to 2.5 years for my wife and I, and children as well. And they didn't see me most of the time. Like literally, Chelsea would pack me lunch to go to the basement to work. We started the daily podcast, which you mentioned, and, I would record 12 to 15 interviews just back to back to back as hard as I could go. We called it my marathon day, 2 days a month. And I would still record interviews in the afternoons after I get off from my federal agent position. I started traveling to these conferences as hard as I could go, networking with as many people as possible. And the Lord just sustained us. I can't even explain it other than that, because it doesn't honestly makes complete sense. Why most wives would stay with somebody like I did not exist in the home. Like for 2 years, she did everything. Okay, and we'll get to that probably, but there is a reason why I think it was important to her. My wife she couldn't care less about real estate. However, she cared a lot about our mission, our why, the ultimate goal of what we were pursuing. And if not for that, I don't think it would have happened, right? We wouldn't have probably kept going. It was so important during that time that Chelsea and I connected. We became early risers. Right before this, that's when I started educating myself. That was my time to start learning and to growing and reading and doing all these things. But that also became a time, hey, when we were in the busiest of seasons for like 2.5 to 3 years, where I didn't exist almost in the home. Unfortunately, I'm not proud of that, but that's what it took to grow as fast as we did. If it wasn't for that morning time, I'm not sure, what we would have done, because that was a time, hey, Chelsea and I could connect, what's happening today, what's happening this week, how are the kids doing? All those important moments, right? That you need to have with your spouse, right? At that time. So crucial time for us. Obviously, eventually we started doing deals. I partnered with a mentor on a couple projects, found a business partner that I aligned with on many fronts. I've been asked by many people to partner and said no. However, this was very different, with this man and his family, things I got to learning about him. And we had complementary skill sets. And fortunately, we've both been pushing towards this thing in different areas. And we were able to take off very fast, very fast. First project together was $30 million, and we've done many of those now, just closed a large fund as well. And the sky's the limit now. I feel like we're still at the bottom of the hockey stick. We're in a big hiring phase right now as well. And many things are happening.
Well, thanks for sharing some background in your story. And your story is one that resonates with so many people, and I think is one of the reasons why you've achieved such a a level of success in such a short period of time, because your story is something that a lot of people can relate to. You know, making that, having the desire to create a life that gives you the time to spend with your family, but also to do some things that you enjoy and love, and have the freedom and flexibility of financial freedom. And your pursuit of that is a great story and very inspiring. I want to just for context and to make sure that, you know, we understand how this sort of progressed for you, because that's what a lot of our listeners are looking to do through our podcast, is understand the path that you took to get to where you are today. You mentioned that 2009, 2001, you got in the military. You came back. You eventually got into law enforcement thereafter with the Kentucky State Police. You really wanted to start learning about this real estate thing because you felt helpless with the career that you were in. Although you loved it, wasn't necessarily going to get you to where you wanted to go financially. So you read some Rich Dad, Poor Dad, other books, podcasts, and then you bought these triplexes in 2009, and they were a headache for you. And then you became a federal agent and moved to Virginia. And then you mentioned that you had bought a 15 unit. So you sold the triplexes, and then you bought a 15 unit apartment building. And so there was a lot going on in this space where you moved to Virginia, you were a horse trainer, but you were still doing real estate. Tell us a little bit about the strategy back then before you were exposed to syndication. How did you dispose of the triplexes? How did you work both the federal agent job as well as being a horse trainer and buying a 15 unit apartment building? Talk to us just a little bit about that time frame.
Yeah. So there wasn't as much strategy as I wish I could say right now. That's part of the problem, probably. But also there was so many limiting beliefs at that time. I had started going to some local meetups, and just trying to get connected, trying to learn more about this real estate thing, learning more about commercial real estate. At that time, I really thought, I would try to find a duplex or try to find a fourplex, or, I wasn't even sure how I would do that. We didn't have a ton of money to put down on a down payment. I knew there would probably have to be some partners, or I would have to find somebody to help invest with me. I had no idea, but I just wanted to go start learning. I met a guy who owned hundreds of single family homes in the area, built a relationship with him. But honestly, he was a very successful entrepreneur, but he had built a business around these single family homes and another business that was very successful for him. However, this 15 unit that he had a connection to, actually, he knew that I was wanting to get into multifamily, but he felt intimidated by this 15 unit apartment building. Okay. Which looking back, I'm like, why was he intimidated by that? He's a very successful entrepreneur and done so many things. However, he knew that was what I was wanting to do. So he's like, well, let's go do this together. You're learning about multifamily, and so we partnered on that project. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that was, I couldn't have done that on my own. And he felt like he could, and he could have, but he didn't think that he could, and so there was value, that we both added. I would still argue him more than me, but that was a big learning experience for me. Right. I mean, not just in partnership. So I learned a lot around that at that moment. But just kind of expanding my mind, right. That there are things that are possible, bigger than what I had thought of. At that time, I really thought that, okay, rentals are going to be great, but I had started looking for duplexes. I had a young lady from church started helping me send out hundreds of mailers, trying to find people and trying to, see if there's anybody that would seller finance, all those things that, you're first getting your real estate. You're trying to, is this, the way I'm going to make it happen? Maybe I can own 10 rentals and supplement my income. That was really all I had envisioned, at that moment. And so go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, and I appreciate you giving some context to that, because it almost feels like Whitney was, in the military as a federal agent, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's 300 million. But I love that you were in the trenches going through the struggle as well on the real estate side. You had been exposed to real estate. It wasn't just, hey, I bought the triplexes and then all of a sudden syndication happened. 3 years later, I've got $300 million of assets under management. You were going through that just like everybody else does. But I heard a few key points that came out in your story. And number one was the walk on the beach with your wife. where you guys had this sort of aha moment where you said, okay, we've got to take some drastic action. Talk to us about that decision to sell the house, sell the farm, make the move, and be aggressive about going to these conferences and starting to meet people that were thinking bigger than you were.
I think the exposure to the first conference was massive. That just broadened my mind, right, to what is possible. And not only that, it was like a few people that had made it happen, but lots of people, had actually, done it. And that gave me, I guess, encouraged me to think, okay, I could do this too, right? Hey, if they can figure this out, I can do this. I can make this happen. I knew wealth could be created, through real estate, all those things. But I knew the horse training thing was going to keep holding me back from pushing a commercial real estate business. If we stayed there, I knew that there's going to be somebody else who want me to train their horse, right? And I'm going to want to do it, right? I'm going to want to keep doing it. I just enjoyed it. Like I said, it was a passion of mine, but I knew that to be very serious about the commercial real estate business, I just had to just cut that off completely. And that was
and you were making good money in that business, right? I mean, enough money that would provide a good life for you and your family. It just took so much of your time, and that's a big battle that a lot of people have to go through, right? Many of them are stuck in a corporate career that they may even enjoy and make good money, but they know it's not going to give them the life of freedom that they're looking for, and so that's huge. That it wasn't you. You were still feeling the pain of not having your freedom, time freedom.
Right. That's exactly
But you weren't feeling the financial pain that you were before. You had solved for that, it sounds like.
Yeah. With lots of work. Yes. But the work wasn't going to stop. Was the problem. There was no time freedom. And there was not a time where I seen time freedom coming. And there was always a risk too in that line of work. Well, what if I get injured? Guess what? You're out of work, right? And if it's bad enough, hey, you may not be able to work anymore, So just that as well is like, okay, just the wealth that I wanted to create for the family and for just other things too, even the foundation, that just wasn't going to happen, doing that. And so we had to cut it off. We had to say, what, it's only going to be for a season, but we do have to make this very difficult decision. And I mean, we were called crazy by everyone. Everybody thought, because we had a nice place, we had a nice house and a place we probably could live forever, in a modest place, but we loved it. We were very happy there, and most people would love to live there. And so to them, and think about this too, as a federal agent, yes, great benefits, great salary, every holiday off, great hours, all those things, that security, right? Quote, that everybody, a lot of people dream about, right? And so, and also it was a better probably job than almost anybody in my family had ever had. Okay. So, you think about that and the influences then that I have from family and even friends that say, even people that really care about me, like pastors in our church that are like, when we're getting into this, they're like, Whitney, how you doing? I hadn't seen you in a while, and they love me, right? They love our family. They truly are caring about us. And to them, it seemed crazy, right? What are you all doing? You sold your farm. Are you all okay? You're doing this podcast thing. Do you really see that going somewhere? I know that's kind of what they're thinking, but you got to be ready to combat that. Right. And they can't see the vision. They can't see where you're going. And that was difficult, right? I remember Chelsea and I pulling out of that driveway for the last time and just bawling, just crying, very difficult for us, but we sold all the horses and sold everything, all my tack, we just got rid of everything. I sold it all. And the Lord has this amazing way of working, and I'll quickly tell you, recently we're able to buy back my best horse, and now that horse is teaching my kids how to ride. It's just it's incredible to see that happen. Now we are back out on a farm, but we didn't know how long that would take, but we did have to just, we're just going to cut this off. We do believe it's for a time. It helped us to envision moving back out, to a farm. I had to be able to paint that vision, not only for my wife, but also for our kids. Right. Yeah. But also our mission behind the foundation, I wanted them to see why we're doing this. There's something bigger than just us building wealth for ourselves. or having another farm one day. That is something we hope for our family, but there's something even a lot bigger, than that we're driving for. That's why Daddy's working so hard right now, right? That's why you haven't seen Dad in a week. That's why Daddy's having to travel right now, because we're doing this, to change the trajectory of our entire family, and not only our family now, but many other families.
Yeah, love it. So that was the first sort of pivotal moment, that time on the beach where you guys made that decision to sort of, sell the farm, sell the farm and make the move. And then you found going to the conferences that sort of inspired you, opened your mind to bigger things. And then it seems like finding that mentor was another critical component in your success. If you can, we're running shorter on time, but I do want to touch on that. How important was that? Finding that mentor that aligned with your values and could guide you and give you direction. How important was that for you and your success?
It was crucially important. And I say that, it's like having somebody in your corner is just, it just helps you push you in a whole nother, like it gives you another layer of confidence that you never had before. Right. And I would also say that, it's not because he had like some kind of amazing roadmap to success. Like, Whitney, these are the 3 steps you must do. It's not that. And that's what people expect, right? They expect this like easy thing. If I do this thing and then this thing next, like I'm just going to have success. Well, it doesn't work that way. But ultimately that mentor for me was, hey, when I'm questioning myself, sometimes it was just a little kick in the pants that I needed, right? Or that one little thing that helped me steer the ship in the right direction. It was like 1 degree, a different direction, but hey, that made the difference at that moment, right? I was going to start the daily podcast, and people were questioning me like, Whitney, actually 2 people in our industry that most people listening would know. I was meeting them individually at 2 different conferences, and I was telling them about it, trying to get them to be a guest eventually. And they were like, Whitney, you're crazy. Why would you do a daily podcast? It's too much work, right? So consider, I'd already been told that so many times and said, nope, I'm going to do it anyway. But however, because of these 2 individuals, I thought maybe I should reconsider this. Am I crazy, to even try to do this? And so I went to my mentor, and this is what he said, which he also has a daily podcast. And he said, he wrote back in 1 sentence in an email. And he said, Whitney, I recorded an interview with Robert Kiyosaki while sitting in my Toyota Camry. And it's like, like, let's get this ball rolling. Stop trying to overcomplicate it. Oh yeah. And answer, and like, in speaking to that exact situation to them who were telling me those things, he said, Whitney, that's why you have to do it, because it's too much work for most people. That's why you have to do it. You have to figure it out. Right. And so that was like, it wasn't like he gave me some kind of amazing system, right? It was like, I needed that kick in the pants at that time, right? Or that little bit of motivation to say, you know what, I can figure this out. It doesn't matter what those people said. We can do this. And so there's just many crucial times like that, where you need somebody in your corner that's been there and done that. And oftentimes it's more mindset related. It's more just entrepreneurship than it is like this magic formula, right? That everybody expects. So more than worth it. Every mentor is not created equal. But envision somebody that, hey, is where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now, right? Yeah. Do they represent something you want to be?
Love that. The last piece that I see in your puzzle before we sort of close out the show here is you finding your business partner. And I know a little bit of the background of that story, but it wasn't a quick process for you. Maybe just shed some light on, how you and your partner came together. And, the growth trajectory since you guys have come together is really incredible. And so I think that that's probably a key component for our listeners to sort of understand. Maybe just shed some light on that.
Yeah. And I would back up that to saying, remember all the time spent, that I had spent building the brand and just my even knowledge base in the business, starting a daily podcast, massive expense, not just paying for mentorship, which I say is extremely worth it. It's so worth it to have people on your side, even if you have to pay for it. It's so worth it to be a part of that network, right? And gain that network and exposure with other people that are ahead of you. But at that time too, it was costing me many thousands of dollars every month, to produce the podcast and to travel like I was going. And there were many months where, I would talk to Chelsea and say, in the morning and say, I don't know if we can even afford to do the podcast next month. Like many times we're like, I don't know. I don't know if we can continue doing it, and then the Lord would provide in some way, and, something would happen. Sold my, even the partnership in that 15 unit, and that supported us for a few more months. It was incredible. But so during that time, many people started asking me to partner with them, right? As you, gain presence in an industry and people see you more and more, and, they see you in a different light, right? After some time. And they assume, that I could raise a lot of money, and, everybody's reaching out, would you partner? Hey, would you partner on this deal? Whatever. And often, I said no every time, until, I partnered with my mentor, of course, on a couple projects, but I was very selective about that. And because I'd invested all that time and money, and even all the investor conversations that I'd had up to that point, the last thing I want to do is go blow it on some deal, that was so random, last minute, or, whatever, a partnership that I felt like it was not worthy, and to waste all that. Right. And so finally Chelsea and I had been praying for a business partner. I went to another conference, was introduced to Sam Rust, who is now my business partner, by a mutual acquaintance. And immediately, Sam and I were talking just a little bit, but then we went to dinner. We were amongst a large group of people. I heard him talk about his faith, his family, just early success, for him personally, through a family business and other things that he had done. And I could hear in him that, hey, we have a lot of things in common, right? We're going to agree on many things that are bigger than business. Okay. Like outside of business, just our faith, our family, all those things are very important to each of us, which I feel should come before you even have the business conversation. Right. And so I could hear that in him. He had many children. It was just many things that I could see, okay, this is somebody that I need to get to know a little bit for a potential partnership. I didn't know for sure yet. And so again, the next night we were at dinner again amongst a lot of people, and I heard him talking, and he heard me talking, and I think we could see that, that we're both striving towards the same things, but we had very different skill sets, and it was obvious as well, very different places in the business. And so the last night of the conference, I approached Sam and was very upfront with him. It was like 10 p.m. I was flying out. I had a red eye at like 1:30 or 2 in the morning. And so I approached him, and we were both like, he was walking to his car, I think, I said, hey, Sam, you want to get a coffee for a minute? And I just said, what, from what I know about you right now, actually I said, Chelsea and I have been praying for a business partner for a long time, and you seem to fit the bill. From what I know about you right now, you seem like somebody that I would like to get to know better, for a potential partnership. And so I was just very open about that, right? Like, it doesn't mean we're going to partner. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. However, I would like to get to know you better. And so we had a great conversation. He actually took me to the airport, but on the way, he took me even by his house. I met his wife at like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, and she had homemade bread and some coffee ready when I got there. So I knew it was meant to be, but all that to say, we did a long process then of getting to know each other. I even flew back out there and stayed with he and his family for like 3 or 4 days just to get to know him. And see him interact with his wife, his kids, like that will tell you a lot about somebody, and so, but also just to spend time before we made that decision. We even like did a deal together, knowing that it was just kind of a trial run, and it went very well. It was obvious we had complementary skill sets, and then after that, we did decide to make it, more official, right? Yeah. And it has been, it's just something I feel like only the Lord could have done, because the complementary skill sets, he was working towards finding deals and building broker relationships. I did not have time to do that while doing a daily podcast and building all these investor relationships, right? And so very different focuses, but we were both very focused in our lane, and hey, we both needed those things, right? And so that helped us to move very fast after we partnered.
Yeah. That's a great explanation of, a great strategy for building a partnership and taking that time that's necessary to really get to know somebody. Well, look, we've got to start winding down. I've kept you longer than we anticipated already, but I want to chat a little bit about the bigger picture for you and your business and why you're doing all this. Something that's important to you is the adoption process and helping people through adoption. Briefly tell your story. You've adopted 3 of your own children, and you really have a mission to go out and help other people that are in the same situation. If you don't mind, just share a little bit about that.
Sure. As soon as we moved to Roanoke, we were listening to a pastor talk about how they had adopted and just caring for orphans and widows. And we had never been exposed to adoption. My wife and I were raised in a one stoplight town. We didn't know anybody that was adopted, never even thought about it, really newly married still. However, on our way home from this event, it was as simple as us to why would we not adopt? Like, it just seemed like the right thing to do. And so within a week, we turned in our application to adopt from Ethiopia. And that was a long process of figuring all that out, but we did it as fast as possible. And then 2 years later, our first son, Samuel, came home from Ethiopia. About 10 to 12 months later, our second son, Elijah, came home. He was a domestic adoption. He was born in the States. And then we also have a daughter now, Eden Joy, who's 2.5, who came to our family through adoption. And so, but the first couple of processes were very difficult financially. I mean, 40 to 60 grand, it's more than oftentimes people make in a year. And I hear that often, from other couples that ask us questions about adopting. And so the Lord just pushed Chelsea and I to give us a desire to help these families, right? Help them to commit to adopting, because that is the biggest hurdle for most of these families who would love to bring these children home. 150 plus million orphans in the world. It's a shame, that the process is so difficult, right? I mean, the kids are ultimately paying the ultimate sacrifice. I mean, they are the ones hurting because we put so many stipulations on this process. You do want to ensure it's legal, of course. However, it's not their fault. So we wanted to start a foundation that would help these families with that financial burden. And so we did. And so we did. We committed half our personal profits to this foundation, and that will help families commit to adopting, and so giving them a very large grant to say, hey, you can do this, right? And we help them with fundraising as well, or to use that as a matching grant. But that mission, David, that's what helped, that gave my wife the desire for us to keep doing this, right? During those hard times, hey, she knew that this was for a bigger purpose. Even, our team, they love knowing that, hey, they're a part of something bigger than just LifeBridge Capital, right? Or just us making more money, right? Or even just them making more money. And believe it or not, your team members want to be a part of something bigger than just a paycheck. And they're more motivated, but even bigger than that in our business, guess what? Your investors love knowing that they're a part of something bigger than just a return, right? The return, it doesn't affect their return at all, but most of them love knowing that, hey, they're a part of something, they're investing in something that's giving back, in a big way. And so I didn't see that coming, but that has also been a way for even networking. When I start with my why, like most people have heard of Simon Sinek's book, start with why. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what I was doing. And then I've learned more about that now. But when I start with my why, hey, that changes the whole trajectory of the conversation, right? And then they're asking more questions about that. So if I'm in a room of 200 investors and everybody's talking about their real estate deals, but hey, I start with this, our why, our mission over here about adoption. Well, guess what? That makes me stand out in a big way. Again, the Lord had all that planned out. I did not plan it that way from the beginning. I don't take credit for that, but I started seeing it happen. So a week later, 2 weeks later, I follow up with somebody. They remember who I am, right? Because you stood out in a big way. There's something different. And then we can talk about real estate or talk about business or whatever. But hey, I've built that connection. There's a different connection that's made when you talk about something that's deeper, more personal, and something you're passionate about outside of just, hey, where are you doing business at? Or what's your next real estate deal? Or what kind of returns? Or, all that stuff that everybody's talking about, right?
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Well, Whitney, it's a pleasure to have you on the show to share your journey with our listeners. It's an inspiring story, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to call you a friend and a mentor, and grateful for the work that you're doing both in the real estate space as well as with your foundation. It's inspiring, and I'm excited to have a front row seat watching you do it. What's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, learn more about what you and your team have going on?
LifeBridgeCapital.com. I would encourage you to go there and sign up, and so you can learn about new opportunities and even just learn from the podcast and learn from guests on the podcast. And David's even gracious enough to host a show a week or more now. I'm not sure now how many you're doing, but you're being very helpful and great at doing that. And so we're just trying to help as many people as possible. Whether it's educating them. But LifeBridgeCapital.com. You're welcome to email me as well, Whitney at LifeBridgeCapital.com. Or you can call or text me at 540-585-4338.
Awesome. We'll have that in the show notes. Whitney, again, thank you for coming on. Thanks for sharing your journey with us. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
My pleasure.